I hope everybody's doing well. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight with, apparently we're right smack dab in the middle of one of the most historic storms in Tulsa. That's sarcastic because it's dry. But gotta love Travis Meyer. Appreciate him on that. Just wanting people to be aware. And I'm like, yeah, we're having church tonight. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. For those of you that are new here, my name is Taylor Shear. My wife Cassie and I have the distinct honor of pastoring the local church, and it is, it's been so cool. Just I'm up here during worship, and I'm seeing the mingling of all of my worlds coming in, and it's ironic that it's also happening during the Standard series, and we're finishing up the Standard series tonight, and we're talking just about your standard of friends and who you surround yourself with. And it's one of those things that I see all of the aspects, and it makes me happy. Like we have Josh and Nikki are currently on their honeymoon, so I don't know why we're cheering them. They're not here, but we're in Tulsa. Well, they're on a cruise, which I'm out on too. They don't make sense. You can't leave, and there's people everywhere. But I'm also the guy, I'm not a big traveler. I'll throw that out there. My wife loves to travel. I hate it. I love Vegas. There's everything you'd want to do right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that's how I view it. I'd rather stay here. And I also don't love leaving the country. Not a big fan of that. Because I think if anything were to pop off, my man Trump has our back. And he does in other places. So we take a trip every year out of the country, and I'm not a big fan of it, and it's coming up, and I'm not saying I'm dreading it, but I'm dreading it. But no, they're gone, and then just seeing that the band was phenomenal job tonight, guys. Big O, if you're wondering who Big O is, that's on you. He's the massive Samoan, but we've been friends for a really long time. He's actually the guy I also take to every concert that I go to, just in case. First off, you feel super cool when he's around because he's huge, but he's also, there's been times where we went to Miami for the VU conference, me and him, and we got off at the hotel, and I'm talking to the driver about when he's going to take us next, and I look over, and O is standing with 3 other huge men, and we leave, and he goes, okay, guys, see you later, and I kept walking. I'm like, what is going on? And there was a celebrity there with his security, and O somehow made it into it. So I just see that, and I'm like, stop, you're my friend, you're here, we're here together. And he's like, no, I got you, everything's secure. I'm like, stop it, you're so weird. But there's him, and then Dylan is playing the guitar, and I grew up next to Dylan. Dylan knows more stories about me than I would ever care for anybody to know. But he grew up next door to me for 15 years, and it's just cool to see all of the things, and then new friends and people coming in that it's preparing for this message. It's set me up to communicate what I truly believe is something that we lack in our society today. Social media is, it's got everybody tricked to think that they're social with people, but yet they're looking at a screen. And for instance, my wife and Mackenzie, for instance, her sister, they'll talk about somebody, and I'm like, who are you guys talking about? And they'll say some name of a blogger that they've never met, but they know everything about them, and just talking about it, and it baffles me to where I'm not standing up here as a 33-year-old man trying to bash social media. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it's tricked us to think that we actually know people and know details about people and to know things and socialize with people, when it's the opposite of social is social media. And then the one-on-one interactions and the times that we have with people are becoming fewer and fewer and fewer, to where we have this misperception of what life really is. And then when you hit hard times, it's difficult because you look around and you think you have this base or these people around you, and then you look around and you realize that that's not necessarily the case. For instance, we have been, my wife and 2 kids and I have been living in my parents' house for a week. I moved out when I was 18 for a reason, and I said I would never move back, and I'm currently living there. It is miserable. My parents are in heaven. My kids are in heaven. I think Cass even joined. It's weird for me. But what's interesting about that is the Keystone Dam is letting out more water. It's flooding. We live right on the river. Why that was a good idea when we thought about it, building a house right next to the river, does not make sense, but we did. And so we aren't living there due to the fact of flooding. Well, it hasn't hit our house yet, which is awesome. But Tuesday is when they were announcing that it was happening, so the panic happened, and we moved everything out of our downstairs, and it makes me realize we have way too much stuff. But then we moved everything upstairs, and Cass like walking around, taking stuff off the top shelf downstairs and moving upstairs, and I'm like, babe, if the water hits high enough to hit that, we got bigger issues than that decorative plate that you have up there that we're moving. But no, it was cool because I probably got 75 text messages from guys just saying, man, how's it going? Do you need anything? And it reminded me that it's interesting because Cass asked me, we just went to, just me and her, we go on an anniversary trip with just us, and we went to Palm Beach, and we're just talking. After about a day of just talking about our kids, and we realized we didn't have anything else to talk about because we always talk about our kids, come to find out. But we were just talking, and she said, who is your best friend? And it was interesting because I at that point was preparing for the Standards series, and I knew what I was going to be talking about. And she asked that knowing that I knew that I was going to speak on this tonight. And it was interesting because I went through the process, because when you're in high school, the qualifications for a best friend is very different than it is further on in life. And I answered, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, because in my head, I'm still thinking like, who do I hang out with the most is kind of what my thought process was. But in all reality, that is not what qualifies someone as your best friend. So I'm thinking through it, and then I start to get discouraged because I'm like, man, I thought I had a lot of friends. Like, I can't like think of the one on who that is. And then she goes, no, like who would you rely on? And that changed my perspective and my outlook on friendship, on who a close friend would be. Because it used to be, who did I hang out with the most? Who did I enjoy the most? Who was I around the most? But what it is now is, if I were to need anything, who would I call? And that has changed it for me, is who has my back? Who is there for me? And what I came to the conclusion of is that is so much better and more accurate of a description and a definition of a good friend or a close friend than who do I hang out with the most, or who do I talk to the most, or no. Grant Lester sitting back there, we've been friends since 9th grade, 8th grade, something like that. He is, and you can ask anybody who he's friends with, he is the perfect friend. I could call him at any moment, and he is down to ride to do whatever. No questions asked, just ready to go. But what I love about Grant is we won't talk for a couple weeks, and then we'll go to lunch, and we pick right up where we started. It's for me, there's a comfort there to that friendship. But I also realize that because he is that down-to-ride friend, that if I ever needed anything, I could call him. And here's the hard part. I think we would say, and I want you to look at yourself, but I think you would say, or I would say, man, if anybody called me and they needed something, I would do it. But is that a reality? Is that real? Is that true? Yeah, it sounds good. It feels good. It's great to say to people, but when it comes down to it, no, there's this mark where we put people, and there's the standard or a line that we have across, and it's anybody below that, I could probably hook them up with someone who can. But if there's anybody on top, if there's a number of people in here that if they call, I would drop whatever to do it. Because I know that is returned to me in that case. So as we're looking through this, I could have gone 100 different ways in regards to your standard of friends. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Timothy. So we're going to read in the Word Philippians 2:19 through 24. Philippians 2:19 through 24. Verse 19, if the Lord Jesus is willing, I hope to send Timothy to you soon for a visit. Then he can cheer me up by telling me how you are getting along. I have no one else like Timothy who genuinely cares about your welfare. All the others care only for themselves and not for the matters to Jesus Christ, or not for what matters to Jesus Christ. But you know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son to his father, he has served me in preaching the good news. I hope to send him to you just as soon as I find out what is going to happen to me here. And I have the confidence from the Lord that I myself will come to see you soon. So here we're going to talk just about Timothy and who he was. And this is Paul writing about Timothy. And Paul being, one of the pillars of the faith, of the fathers of the faith, I mean, it's like he wrote this with such cheer and enthusiasm while being on house arrest in Rome, that he was persecuted constantly and he was incarcerated and beaten for his faith. So he's writing this and he has such enthusiastic. So I'm going to talk about here 6 points that I just got from this little passage here describing Timothy in these glowing terms, these terms that I would hope that someone would describe me as and as a friend. So number one is they are soulmates. They are perfect for each other. They fit well. They work well together. Paul begins with saying, I have no one else like him. I have no one else like him. So the Greek word here used for no one else like him is also used in Philippians 2:2, but it's actually a combination of two words, meaning that it's equal in soul, that they're the same. They're going after the same thing, that they are pursuing the same things in life. Now, I'm not talking about occupation or hobbies. No, what I'm talking about is they both knew the call that God had placed on their life, and they knew where they were headed. While they were not the exact same, they were able to run in step because they both were running in their lane. So they were in step there. So I would encourage you, find friends that are headed towards that common goal of fulfilling the call that God's placed on their life. Everybody has a call. If you have a breath, you have a call. So at some point, you're going to realize that and start moving towards that, and you're going to want to put people around you moving on to that next step or moving on to that next stage. And I'll tell you what, here's the hard part. It's a little sidebar, freebie right here. Not every friend that you have is made to go to that next season with you. Not every friend that's around you is going to go through every season of life with you. I remember it was 6 or 7 years ago, I went through a stage where I felt like friends were just dropping off like flies. I mean, it was nothing ever bad. There was separation, natural separation or whatever, and I realized that, and it really bothered me. Because I'm thinking through, like, these are guys that I would die for. They were like brothers to me, but they're falling off. And I got that revelation that not every person is made to go to that next level with you. What if that person was supposed to be with you to the level that you're at, but then they're going to hold you back from that next level? They're going to hold you back from that next thing that you're moving on to. That's where it gets difficult. You just have to start making hard choices, because when it comes down to it, if I was doing the same thing 5 years ago that I'm doing right now, how is that advancing? I mean, we all have those friends that from our past that we look back, it's like they do the same exact thing that they were doing 5, 10 years ago, whatever it is. I want people around me that are forward thinking, that are moving forward, because I have aspirations in life. I have goals in life. I have a call to fulfill. I need people around me that are also doing that, because if it's not encouraging me, it's pushing me at least, that it's moving me forward. So the wording here that he uses is strong. Paul feels like there is absolutely none like Timothy. What's interesting about this is it's the same concept that's used in the Old Testament to describe the relationship between Jonathan and David. And just seeing these two kindred souls going after one common goal in ministry, that they were together. Number two is Timothy was the real deal. There's no shadow of a doubt with Timothy. Paul says that Timothy is the real deal. The word genuine means natural and legitimate. And his interest here as he's talking about this was that he was a true shepherd, that he truly cared about people and the welfare of other people. The Greek word interest is a strong word that shows that Timothy was concerned to the point of being burdened. How many people in your life are you concerned with the point of being burdened on their welfare, on their situation? Is it out of sight, out of mind? Or are you concerned to the point? I mean, there are people in our lives that we care about what happens. We care about the next step. We care about where they're headed or making sure that when they hit a storm that they make it through. But he is genuinely concerned. He is concerned to the point of being burdened. Number three, Timothy was single-minded. Paul goes on to say that Timothy cared so deeply that other individual concerns of his paled in comparison to everybody else. Look at verse 21. For everyone looks out for his own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. His life was for everybody else. So remember that Paul gives us examples on how to conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel. And he makes it clear. I remember growing up, I went to Kanakuk. It's a summer camp, and their motto is, I am third. And as I was writing this message, that was brought up just in remembering that motto, I am third. And it's God first, other people second, and I am third. How many people do we live our lives that we let into that number two slot? Yeah, it might feel good for everybody to say, yeah, everybody is in that number two spot. Me in the position that I hold, yeah, I want to say that everybody falls into that number two spot, but when push comes to shove, when we actually hit that moment, is that how we react? Is it God first, other people second, and us third? Number four is he's fire tested. He is fire tested. Verse 22 says, but you know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son with his father, he has served me in preaching the good news. So here he says he proved himself. Or this was proof after testing. So it wasn't he talks a good talk, or he says the right things, or he has the right answers at the right time for the right questions. That's not what he's saying. He's saying here that there's proof after testing. Timothy was a seasoned veteran, had survived and thrived through hardship. I mean, there are moments in Corinthians and Thessalonians, and even in 1 Timothy, and then in the Philippians, that he was his troubleshooter. Timothy is who Paul sent in, so he knew that he had been tested, that there was proof through that testing. I think what's hard is there are people that talk a good game, but when you hit that thing, whatever it is, you hit that storm in life, you start to see the people around you who is still going to stand and who had just fallen off by the wayside. I mean, for me, the word stand is something, if there was somebody that said, name what's one word that you would think that you've based your life around, for me, it's been stand. Because I want to stand for myself, for my wife, for my kids, for my extended family, for my friends. I want to stand. It's been to the point, it's based off of the verse that when you've done all to stand, stand. I got it tattooed on my wrist and on the inside of my wrist, just for me, not for anybody else. But I hit a time in my life in my early 20s when I was not sure what to do next. And I remember sitting there and putting my hands down and thinking, It has to be a reminder. I want to be the guy that is known as the guy who stands. He's been through the fire and he's still standing. Because here's the thing. The only way you lose is if you quit. The only way that you're not a good friend, that you're not a good foundation for somebody is that you quit. When it comes down to it, I do not care what is going on, I'm going to stand. I get knocked down, I get back up. That's all it takes. It might be more difficult than others to get back up sometimes. But when it comes down to it, all I care about is getting back up and getting back up. Because for me, if I just quit and lay down, who is going to, as a man and as a guy who is married with kids and has a family, who is going to protect my home? Who's going to be the head of my home if I lay down and stay down? Who is going to stop whatever from happening because I lay down? That is a non-option for me. It really, for me, it's take all selfishness and move on. Very easy. It's interesting. Dad mentioned, he was talking about relationships in February, because that's what you do in church. You talk about whatever the time of the year it is, that's what you talk about. So February love. And he's talking about relationships, and he's like, well, do you have any good just pointers, anything that you think about relationships? I'm like, we make it too hard. We really do. It is not difficult to be a good husband, to be a good wife, to be a good father, be a good mother. I came in, and then each kid has less and less of what I want to do has gone out the window. Genuinely. I don't get to do anything anymore. I have 2 kids. My wife wants 6. I don't care how many more we have because I already don't do anything I want to do. So what does it matter after that? You know what I mean? Who cares at this point? But no, in all reality, if there was an engaged couple that came up and said, what is your advice for your marriage? I would look at the husband and say, just don't be selfish. You have to remove all selfishness. That's all that it comes down to. It's not that difficult. Yes, you are 2 human beings living together. It's super weird. I will throw that out there. It does not make sense. You don't ever get to leave them. They're always around. Way different than dating. Dating, they go home. It's awesome. You sleep at night by yourself. Not anymore. But here's the thing. Just don't be selfish. It's not difficult. So if you say, hey, how do I be a good friend? Don't be selfish. Care about other people more than you care about yourself once, and then try it again. See how it just starts stockpiling on top of each other to where all of a sudden you come in and you're wondering how to get more friends. Just be a good friend. Quit being selfish. Number 5 is he was like a son. That's a relationship they had. Paul then likens his relationship to Timothy to that of a son and a father. He says, in 2 other letters, he says, my true child in the faith and my beloved son, my beloved faithful child in the Lord. So in this, it's interesting because during this time, your occupation was chosen by, it's whatever your dad did. What your dad did, he taught you those tools of the trade, and then that's what you did. So for him to say he was his son is he had that relationship with him to where they were moving forward, that he was preaching the good news. And number 6, he was a servant. Notice that Paul did not say that Timothy served me in the work of the gospel. He inserted a very, very important word in this verse. He didn't just say he served me. He said he served with me. He served with me in the work of the gospel. That they were a team of servants. They both had servants' hearts, and they cared about everybody else more than they cared about themselves. That you surrender your own plans to serve. He was not interested in being a superstar, just a servant. He wanted to be faithful and not famous. So for me, when we look at how to choose our friends and how to have the right friends and then how to be a right friend, throw away any selfish ambition that you have. It's get past what can you do for me. I'm going to do this for you so that you're going to do this for me. That's not how this works. It's that you truly care about somebody. Okay, real quick, I have 5 points here on how to get better friends, more friends, maybe it's just friends. But there's 5 points here. Number 1 is, if you want to have friends, you must be a friend. Very plain and simple. If you're a bummer to be around, nobody wants to be around you. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that the only way to be a friend, or the only way to have a friend is to be one. Number 2, if you are looking for friends or looking for the right friends, you have come to the right place. The friends that you build in church are friends that, I'm not saying they never mess up, but they are friends that I would consider good friends. So get involved. The women are great at this because that's very natural for them to talk a bunch and talk about things that don't matter. And in all reality, they just talk. And I'm like, we go through that in our relationship constantly. It's, okay, why are you telling me this? Like, what? Yes, honey. Tell me more. Oh, she wore what color dress? No, but just talking, and women are great at that. So girls, keep doing that. So I'm gonna talk to the guys real quick. Guys, we live in a world that is, to be a man, you just have to be a man. Don't show pain. Don't show stress. Nothing affects you. And that's such a isolated, lonely place to live. We live in this Rambo world. And I think what's hard is even saying that, I think, man, that's awesome. Rambo was the man. But when it comes down to it, to live a life like that, it's not healthy, it's not good, it's not enjoyable. But finding those friends. So guys, this is a plug for our men's Bible study. The first Monday of every month, we get together and meet at 7:30 right here. And it has been one of the coolest experiences I have ever had. Because it is literal 10 or 15 guys that just get together and just talk. We're supposed to talk about a book, we don't. We just talk about life. And it's interesting how every time somebody comes in and is going through something, every time somebody's going through something, and what's been so cool is every time they actually say it, which is baffling because we don't show that we have problems. Everything's good. And guys have come in, and it's been so cool to see the different dynamics and the different people that are giving their advice, or they're encouraging, or they're speaking life into situations. And it's been so cool to see how guys leave encouraged. They leave built up. It's that I can actually do this. But it's also created friendships and relationships with guys that I don't know if it would be natural for me just to come, to set up on Tuesdays, to have people come in, and hopefully in that 15 minutes before and the 15 minutes after, get a relationship with somebody or build a relationship. When that's not the case, the wisdom and the insight that people give, it's unbelievable. I would have never known it. Brad and I just became friends 6 months ago or something like that maybe. And I remember sitting in the book study or the Bible study, the first one we did, he talked for like 3 minutes, and it still has messed with me what he talked about. I'm like, where did that come from? So then I went to him, I said, man, have you ever spoken? Like, ever give a message? He said, no. I'm like, oh, okay. So I went to his wife and I was like, so what do I got to do to get Brad to speak? She said, well, you're probably just going to have to tell him he has to do it. So I literally left her and I went to Brad and I was like, hey, you're speaking in June for me when I'm out of town. He's like, oh, okay. So another plug, Brad's going to be speaking in a few weeks and I'm pretty excited about it. And I was like, not only that, but you're going to speak during the Untouchables series. So it's going to be we're going to talk every week, one thing that is each week that is an elephant in the room of churches that nobody wants to talk about, but we all have there. So I was like, so you're going to be doing one of those. Which one do you want to do? Never mind, I'm going to tell you which one you're going to want to do. And now I'm just thinking of what will be the most enjoyable thing for me to be able to think about knowing that he has to prepare a message about whatever it is. But I went to, and I don't know if I would have ever seen that just in the conversation that we have here. That if it wasn't a setting where guys got around and talked, I don't know if I would have ever seen that in him. But just spending time together out of the norm, because we can talk about different stuff, we have interests, and that's what we learn. We learn the interests before and after church. But you learn someone's heart by actually spending time with them. You learn who they are and who their inner being is by actually spending time with them. And it just might be that spending time with them builds a relationship that when you hit a storm and you feel like nobody else has ever gone through it and no one knows how you are, what you're going through, that person might have gone through something like that. I just don't want to know people's interests. I want to know their heart. And seeing that has now created a friendship that is deeper than it would have been just, hey, how's it going? Man, it's crazy. They're calling for another historic storm. Look, there's nothing. I mean, that's the talk. We truly talk about the weather. I want to get past that. I want to know what your heart is. What do you want to do? We can do it. You name it. You have a heart for something? Let me know. We'll do it. Just be prepared. This isn't an idea. Don't throw out an idea and say, hey, here you go. Because that's what it comes down to a lot. Here, we should do this. Someone else should do it. So I just want a word of warning. If you bring me an idea, you will be in charge. Just throwing that out there. So don't come unless you're ready to be in charge. So make sure you really want to do it. But no, it's what is in your heart. Let's do it. You want to help people? Let's help them. You want to feed the hungry? Let's feed them. Whatever you want to do, we will do it. I want to help underprivileged kids. Let's do it. Tell us what we're doing. So get involved. Number 3 is serve. In a recent poll, the Barna Group found that friendship was an extremely important factor in church growth and success. One of the findings is fascinating. Members with best friends at church are more satisfied with their church and more engaged in ministry. That does not surprise me at all. I don't want to go do something that is out of the norm. I don't want to go serve somewhere if I don't have a friend there. I wouldn't go to a church service without a friend there. Am I just going to go sit and listen? We need those relationships. We need those encounters. We need those friendships. So if you don't have a friend here, make one. Bring one, whatever you want. Whatever floats your boat at that point. But you're going to get more out of life doing it with people. You're going to get more out of whatever you're doing if you have a friend there, if you have somebody there with you. Number 4 is think of others' needs ahead of your own. I believe this attitude must be an intentional act of will. You must be actively seeking out the others' needs to meet them and looking for opportunities to consider others over yourselves. Remember Paul's words earlier in chapter 2. He says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. And then number 5 is you have to find that friend that is Jesus. You have to have a relationship with Jesus. It's the only way this works. It's the only way life works. You truly have to have a relationship. You have to spend time. You're only going to go so far, and you're only going to be able to really dig down and take things out and add things in to a certain point. We all have issues. We all deal with stuff. If you could fix yourselves, you would. You would have already done it. I would have. If I could have fixed all my own issues, I would have done it already. But I can't. Jesus can. That's how you become a better friend. So real quick, going through them again. If you want to have friends, you must be a friend. Get involved. Serve. Think of others' needs ahead of your own. And find the faithful friend named Jesus. In one conversation, Jesus changed the rules of friendship. In one conversation. Invite him in and let him have his place. If you want friends, be a better friend. Care about others. And watch and see how stuff starts to work out.